Friday night on the Final Five, and social distancing or not, as always, I'm joined by Washington Times columnist, SiriusXM host, and Fox 5 contributor Tim Young. He's back up late with me on the Final Five after a triumphant run on Like It or Not tonight. Earlier this evening.
Pretty well with that, right, Jim? Like, I mean, that's been, like, for us not having any kind of, like, visual cues with each other.
Right.
I think Like It or Not's been going pretty well.
Well, that's what it is. I was telling Sean and Blake this, that when we're on that couch together, and if you see, say, the cameras on Angie, I can kind of give you that cue, okay, you go next. And tonight it was sort of like...
When you give me the cue, shut her up, I know what you're talking about, Jim.
But I give you that look. Hey, let's talk about, so this is the second week that you've been there and not here with me, but something happened to you this week. First of all, last week we were talking about our favorite restaurants, and it turns out one of those restaurants, really, it helped them. They had a lot of people show up because they saw them mentioned on Fox 5. Tell us what happened to you this week.
Yeah, well, stupid me. I go for a walk along the National Mall because it's not far from me, and my hands were cold. I go to actually go do a pickup from a place called Grazie Grazie, which, by the way, they don't know who I am, but they're putting little nice notes, like thanking people in their things. Grazie Grazie makes great salads down at the wharf. You should go there. So I go to, like, enter in my credit card information at the end of my walk. My hands are a little cold, and I just completely flopped my wallet onto the ground, apparently, and didn't pay attention to it.
Smooth.
So I lose my wallet. For the first time in my life, I lose my wallet. And I'll be, if a day later someone didn't put in, like, at least 15 to 20 minutes worth of work to get my wallet back to me. You want to talk about, like, kindness in, like, a time of pandemic?
Right.
I believe in human beings now because someone found my wallet and, number one, called my banks with my credit card information, and the banks were like, sorry, we can't help you. They call SAG-AFTRA, our union, Jim.
Exactly. That's all it took.
SAG reaches out to me, calls me from L.A. and says, hey, somebody found your wallet. It turns out to be one of my neighbors, and I of course, gave her something nice. But, like, I just, for someone to find a wallet and be that kind, and I think really, and I wrote a column about this in the Washington Times this week, you know, this pandemic, it's awful. People are dying. This is a terrible situation to be in, but I think we're remembering to care about one another in this, and that's the silver lining.
What do they say? It doesn't cost anything to be nice, and
yes.
You know, that was you reached out to me when you lost it, and you were panicked about having to go to the DMV to get a license. Oh, by the way, they're closed, but regardless, I'm glad everything is fine, which brings us to today, because we talk about being kind right now, and kindness is not something that is synonymous with Washington, but earlier today, some movements were made. They finally passed the CARES Act. It passed the Senate a couple of days ago. It passed the House today. The Senate passed it unanimously, just about unanimously, and the House passed it on a voice vote. It was kind of strange to see both sides praising each other, not necessarily pats on the back, but I got some sense that maybe there is some collegiality where people actually do respect each other every now and then on Capitol Hill.
It turns out when there's a national pandemic and there's a crisis going on, people can shut up about, you know, the petty things with one another and actually come together and work for the American people. Again, silver lining in all of this. I know it's a terrible, terrible situation, but I'm glad that people were able to put their differences aside. Other than, you know, maybe, you know, NPR can enjoy their extra money that I don't approve of, and the Kennedy Center should give out some free tickets, Jim.
Yeah, so what amazed me about that was, the president was asked about the Kennedy Center. They did get some money in the bill, and he said, you know, they have been hurt as well, which is absolutely true. But what I liked hearing politicians say today was, it's not a perfect bill. It doesn't have everything we want. And what that says to me is, cooperation and compromise is not a bad thing. There are some on both sides of the political spectrum that are so ideologically rigid where if you even think to reach across the aisle, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and why did this happen over the past couple of years? Look, I know Trump is mouthy, but, like, he's just a Republican. They're just Democrats. They have differences in opinion. Forget, like, the tweets and everything else. Like, we should still be yelling at each other to find a compromise in the middle and working together. And I'm glad they were able to do it here. Unfortunately, I feel like once this pandemic is over, it's going to be back to business as usual in D.C.
Tim, let me just get your take on this, because we're looking at the president signing the bill. There was a lot made on Twitter, as everything seems to be made of a lot these days, about the fact the president didn't invite any Democrats to the bill signing ceremony. I don't necessarily know if they would have shown had they been invited, but do you think that that was an oversight? Do you think that it should have been a little more bipartisan from that visual, or is it just something people were making a big deal out of for no reason?
Unfortunately, because of the way things have been since 2016, it's a no-win, right? He invites them, they could show up and act out or do something else, or they may turn him down and try to make a thing of it. This is, again, going back to the way things were before the pandemic. I think it's just playing it safe to have Republicans there.
Well, all I think of is right after, and I'm trying to remember what, because we've had so many tragedies. It was when Congressman Giffords was shot, and we had that State of the Union where everybody was side by side, Democrats sitting next to Republican, and it was sort of like, look, people are getting together, and then just a few months later, forget about it. But regardless, Tim Young,
we should be able to do this, Jim. You hate me. We show up every week together.
I with every fiber of my being, but yet you keep coming back, and we appreciate it. Tim, would you like to plug anything before we go?
I'm going to go back. Again, I got a nice note from my place here. Forget all the things I'm working on. Grazie, grazie. They make really good salads down at the Wharf. They're one of my favorite places. They're a lot cheaper than you would think for D.C. and at the Wharf. You should go and patronize them if you're in the area.
Look at that. Heartfelt words from Tim Young. Find him on Twitter. Tim runs his mouth. Tim, good to see you, my friend, and hopefully soon you will be with me once again, as it should be.
Maybe.
Back after this on the Final Five.